History is shaped by people. But some individuals are so extraordinary, so utterly unbelievable, that their lives sound like pure fiction. Today, we are looking at 6 of the most incredible people who ever lived. We have got a king so rich that he accidentally wrecked entire economies just by being generous. A soldier who kept fighting World War II for nearly 30 years after it had already ended. A man who survived not 1, but 2 atomic bombs. And a holy man who lived on top of a pole for almost 40 years. These people were all very, very real. Let's get into it. Let's begin with a man often called the richest human being in all of history. His name was Mansa Musa, and in the 14th century he was the emperor of the Mali Empire in West Africa. His kingdom was blessed with an almost unimaginable amount of gold, so much that historians today still struggle to even put a number on his wealth. But the world only truly grasped his riches in 1324, when Mansa Musa set off on a grand pilgrimage to Mecca. And he did not travel quietly. His caravan was said to include tens of thousands of people, soldiers, and servants, along with a long train of camels, each one carrying heavy bars of pure gold. As he passed through Egypt, Mansa Musa was so incredibly generous that he gave away and spent absolutely staggering amounts of gold. And here is the truly unbelievable part. He handed out so much gold in the city of Cairo that he accidentally crashed its entire economy. The sudden flood of gold made the precious metal far less valuable, causing years of massive inflation that reportedly damaged the whole region's economy for over a decade. He was so rich that his simple kindness became a disaster. Our next story is about a soldier who simply refused to give up. His name was Hiroo Onoda, an intelligence officer in the Japanese army during World War II. In 1944, he was sent to a small island in the Philippines with orders to conduct guerrilla warfare. His commander gave him one strict instruction: never surrender and never take your own life. And Onoda took that order incredibly seriously. When the war finally ended in 1945, Onoda flatly did not believe it. He was convinced that the news of Japan's surrender was simply enemy propaganda, a trick designed to make him come out of hiding. So he stayed deep in the jungle, and he kept right on fighting. For years, he survived in the wilderness with a small group of men, faithfully carrying out his mission. Leaflets were dropped announcing that the war was over, but he dismissed every single one as a fake. One by one, his companions died or surrendered, but Onoda alone remained. He continued his lonely secret war for almost 30 years. Finally, in 1974, his former commanding officer was flown in to personally relieve him of his duty. Only then did Hiroo Onoda finally lay down his weapon, nearly 3 decades after the war had ended. This next man may just be one of the unluckiest and yet luckiest people who ever lived. His name was Tsutomu Yamaguchi. In early August of 1945, Yamaguchi, an engineer, was on a business trip in the Japanese city of Hiroshima. On August 6th, he was preparing to leave when the first atomic bomb was dropped. He was less than 2 miles from the center of the blast. He survived, but he was badly burned and temporarily blinded. Injured, he spent the night in a shelter and then made the long journey home to recover. His hometown, however, was the city of Nagasaki. On August 9th, just 3 days later, Yamaguchi was somehow already back at work, describing the horror of the Hiroshima blast to his disbelieving boss. And at that exact moment, the second atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. Once again, Yamaguchi was about 2 miles from the very center, and once again, against all odds, he survived. Tsutomu Yamaguchi is the only person officially recognized by the Japanese government as a survivor of both atomic bombings, and remarkably, he lived on to the age of 93. Imagine surviving the most famous shipwreck in all of history. Now imagine it happening to you more than once. This was the incredible life of Violet Jessup, a woman who became known as Miss Unsinkable. Violet worked as an ocean liner stewardess and nurse in the early 20th century. In 1911, she was working aboard a brand new luxury ship called the Olympic when it collided with a British warship. The Olympic was badly damaged, but it managed to limp back to port without sinking. That was close call number one. The very next year, in 1912, Violet took a position aboard the Olympic's famous sister ship. That ship was the Titanic. When the Titanic struck an iceberg and sank into the freezing Atlantic, Violet was one of the lucky survivors, escaping in a lifeboat. And incredibly, she was still not done. A few years later, during the First World War, Violet was working as a nurse aboard yet another sister ship, the Britannic. And that ship sank, too, after striking a mine. Violet survived yet again, even after being pulled deep under the water by the ship's propellers. She had now survived disasters aboard all three of the great sister ships. Our next person took dedication to a truly bizarre extreme. In the 5th century, in what is now Syria, there lived a Christian monk named Simeon. Simeon was deeply devoted to his faith, and he desperately wanted to escape the crowds of people who constantly sought him out for blessings and advice. So he came up with a rather unusual solution. He climbed to the top of a tall stone pillar, and he decided to live up there. And then, he simply did not come down. Simeon lived on top of that pillar, on a small platform, reportedly just a few feet wide, fully exposed to the burning sun and the freezing cold. He survived on food that was passed up to him on ropes by his followers below. But the strangest part of all is just how long he kept it up. Simeon is said to have lived on top of his pillar for around 37 years. Over time, his fame only grew, and huge crowds would gather at the base of the pillar just to hear him preach from high above them. He inspired many imitators who became known as the Stylites, or Pillar Saints. For nearly 4 decades, a man lived his entire life, perched on top of a pole. Our final person was one of the richest women in the entire world, and also, quite possibly, the cheapest. Her name was Hetty Green, and in the late 19th century she was a financial genius who built an enormous fortune on Wall Street through shrewd, fearless investing. At a time when women were almost entirely excluded from high finance, she became one of the wealthiest people in all of America. But Hetty Green was also famous for being almost unbelievably frugal. Despite being worth the equivalent of billions of dollars today, she chose to live in cheap, run-down apartments, partly to avoid paying taxes. She reportedly wore the same old black dress until it slowly turned brown, and she refused to do proper laundry to save money, instructing washers to clean only the dirtiest hems. The endless stories of her stinginess earned her the nickname, the Witch of Wall Street. The most infamous tale, though it may well be exaggerated, claims that when her son injured his leg, she spent so long searching for a free medical clinic that his condition worsened, and his leg eventually had to be amputated. She died one of the richest women in the world, sitting atop a vast fortune that she could barely bring herself to ever spend. And there they are, 6 of the most unbelievable people who ever lived. A king whose generosity crashed an economy, a soldier who fought a war for 30 years too long, and a woman who survived 3 separate sinking ships. These remarkable lives prove that the truth really is so much stranger than fiction. If you enjoyed meeting them today, then hit that subscribe button for more weird history every week, and tell me down in the comments which of these people amazed you the most. I'll see you in the next one.